can all thank Mr. Salisbury. He brought his A game this year. You know, he followed the lead from Dr. Young this morning. He started out by telling us all the things he wasn't going to talk about, FERPA, you know, and he ended with enthusiasm as directed by Dean Holland. You know, only thing there, whenever he mentioned Dean Holland on the calendar committee, he didn't have a D by his name for deceased. When Mr. Boozer asked me to talk to you this morning about some changes that are going on, he asked particularly to talk about outcome-based funding or performance-based funding. I'm not going to talk about that yet. Okay. I want to start out and tell you about something that I'm involved with as part of a statewide committee, and it is the ERP. Let's see. There we go. The ERP Steering Committee. Now, first of all, whenever I got appointed to this committee, I had to go and look up what ERP really meant. ERP is Enterprise Resource Planning. It is a process by which a company manages and integrates the important parts of its business. I mentioned earlier today that we are a business. And when you start talking about college, we don't normally think of ourselves in that manner, but we are a business. There's a lot of things that we do that have a lot of different parts to it, and this is a way of organizing it. Now, in general terms, this is a piece of software, and it is the software that we have been using here at this college for 21 years, Alliant software. And, you know, it can be a bit confusing and challenging to think that we are going to change how we keep up administratively with all the things that we've been doing, and we are ingrained in us for the last 21 years, but we're getting to that. We've reached that point. ERP. With a college, it is the intricate process that is used to capture data and manipulate that data to meaningful information. Now, everything that we do has to be kept up with. Dean Wilkins talked about the SAC COC process. A lot of the data that we accumulate from the classroom all the way to Dr. Young's office has to be chronicled and put in certain order. Not only that, but reports have to be given to agencies in Montgomery and in Washington, and points in between. It is that data and the accumulation of that and how we capture that that helps us put those reports together. At Wallace College, it is a system of forms that captures data and transfers the information to digital files. Those files become a library where data can be filtered and sorted into reports that serve as tools to make meaningful decisions. The ACCS office, led by the chancellor, put together a committee to take a look at what we do. And an ERP management information system integrates all the things we do at all colleges. It considers the planning, the purchasing, the manufacturing, or the instructional services that we deliver, student services, financial aid, marketing and public relations and recruiting, finance and accounting, operational support, facility management, transportation security, information technology, human resources, and enterprise services, such as our bookstore, our vending services, and our food services. Every college has the same functions across the state. Some colleges have other things beyond that, such as dorms, and we don't want that. The problem. The Alabama Community College system does not have an effective way of obtaining data from the colleges that is accurate or timely. This situation exists for the following reasons. Colleges do not have an established protocol for accounting for their data. An example would be the chart of accounts. There have been 26 colleges in the state, in the two-year college system, through mergers and demergers and whatever. There are fewer than that now, but I can't tell you how many this week. Every one of those colleges are using a similar chart of accounts, but not exactly the same. So if the Legislative Fiscal Office wants to know how much money a college is spending for equipment, they would send out a request to the ACCS office. The ACCS office then sends out an email to Dr. Young, who sends it to me, that says, tell us how much money we're spending on equipment. Well, we would go to our chart of accounts, we'd run a report, and we'd put it together, give it back, it goes back up the change. But the problem is that how we account for our equipment is not the same as how Jeff State may account for theirs, or how LBW may account for theirs, or Chattahoochee Valley. So the data that goes back to the ACCS office is not the same data from all colleges. So the information that gets sent to the Legislative Fiscal Office is not accurate. The information that is submitted to the ACCS office is not real-time data. An example would be the financial statement. We accumulate financial data for the college over a period of 12 months. The fiscal year does not coordinate with our academic year, and neither one of them match up to the annual calendar. Our fiscal year is October 1 through September 30. So we accumulate this data all through the year, and we send a report in one time during the year. That is in November of the next year. It's 13 months old by the time it's all put together and it goes to the ACCS office. The people who give us money, the legislature, wants better information than that. And so when they call the ACCS office and say, give us information, then we have to scramble about, try to put something together and send it up there in an interim report, which is, again, not accurate. The information that some of the colleges lack sufficient IT equipment and personnel to collect the data and submit it as requested and as needed. I want to say this in support of our ITS department. We have one of the best in the state. We put more money into our technology here at the college than other colleges do. We have better trained personnel. We have more labs per student and more computers per student than practically any other college in the state. We work with it every day, and we may not realize that. And we may not have as much as we actually want. But I promise you, we're far ahead of what other colleges are. This point was brought to bear to me in serving on this committee, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but we're going to have to do a presentation of some ERP softwares at different colleges across the state for everybody to have an opportunity to evaluate what we move to. And one of the colleges that volunteered to host one of these sites, which we're going to be one of those, but one of the colleges that volunteered to be one of these sites is a college almost the same size as we are. Do you know how many people they have in their IT department? Two. Could we survive with all of our computers with just 2 people? No, we can't. I don't know how they do it. I really don't know how they're going to host one of these streaming presentations for people to evaluate software. The colleges do not use the same administrative software to collect and file their data. I mentioned that we use Alliant administrative software, and I realize that if you are in the classroom, that probably doesn't affect you, but it affects everybody that is working at a higher level of supervision, because we all have to use the administrative software at some point. The other product that's being used in the state, there are 16 colleges in the state that are using Alliant, and there are 10 that are using Banner software. Alliant was homegrown for the 2-year college system, and it was written, and I won't get into all the sordid details, but we bought it from the 2-year college, and it was created by the 2-year college. Banner, on the other hand, is huge. Every major college and university in the United States uses Banner, and they all have lots of money to pay for it. Several years ago, a former chancellor made the determination that we were going to move to Banner. And so he went out and he found money for 10 colleges to move to Banner. It is very, very expensive. Those colleges moved over to them, and it almost broke their budget because the chancellor paid for it, but every year they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay Banner to run the software for them. And it is too expensive for them to use. We, on the other hand, have a much lesser tool. It's cobbled together to do what we want to do, and because we have very well-trained employees, they can get out of the system whatever we have to get from it, but it is far more laborious than it is with Banner. So we're two ends of the spectrum. We have one software that we're using that's way down here and one that's way up there. And the question is, what are we going to do? But without a doubt, we're going to have to do something to get everybody singing off the same sheet of music. In its infinite wisdom, the Board of Trustees and the Chancellor identified this problem and said we need some help because we don't have people that know how to do this as well. So they employed this company that's called CampusWorks. And CampusWorks has come in and made an assessment of all the two-year colleges to determine exactly what the problems are and what we need to do to solve it. It made an evaluation, and in its evaluation, the company found that the ACCS could not significantly increase efficiency, significantly increase efficiency by adopting a cloud-based ERP system to facilitate the flow of accurate and timely data from the colleges to the system office. A cloud-based system is something that's on the internet. It's not housed here at the college. What we run is running on an AS400 computer and is located right here. If there's a problem, we can lay hands on it. The problem is, though, that because it is located here and not at the full access of the ACCS office, is that they don't have access to real-time data. And it means that whatever they would require of us, they can reach out and touch in a cloud rather than just have to send something to us. They can manipulate the data for us, which takes a great burden off of what we do. In addition, they also found that it was reported that a cloud-based ERP system could facilitate a better use of human capital through the employment of a system of shared services. Now, what in the world does shared services mean? I wasn't really sure either. Shared services means that because we're all working off the same system, there are some things that we do that we could do for other colleges. We do it well. I will use payroll as an example. It may be that we could have the payroll department for several colleges in the state. And because we're on a cloud-based system, we can do that, and nobody ever misses getting funds transferred into your account or a paycheck in common terms. But by doing that, it means another college would not have to have a payroll officer because we would have one. This steering committee was made up by a large group of people, and it was people from different areas and in colleges. We had two doctors, two presidents, Dr. Martha Lavender and Dr. Perry Ward. We had Jason Morgan, who was Dean of Finance for Hanceville State. We had Shane Wilson, Director of Human Services from Jefferson State. Teresa Mays from Jefferson State. Nathan Tyler, from Director of IT for Calhoun. Brian Strickland, Director of IT for Coastal, used to be Faulkner. I served on the committee. Melissa Stowe, Director of Financial Aid at Bevel State. Richard Fiore, who is Director of IT from the ACCS office. Trish Jones from the ACCS office. Roger Bates, who is legal counsel to the Board of Trustees. And Melvin Evans, who is Director of IT for Hand Arundel and works with Hand Arundel, with Roger Bates. We sent out a request for proposal. It's kind of like a bid, except with a request for proposal, you don't have to take the lowest bid. You take the one that can give you the best value for what you asked for. We had responses from 6 companies. Alliant was one. Their response was 200 pages. Campus Management, response of 200 pages. Elution or Banner, their response was 578 pages. They could afford to print more copies. Genzabar was 200 pages, and Oracle was 200 pages. We had a lot of reading to do. There was one, Workday, who is a pretty reputable company, was disqualified because they refused to use our form and report as we asked for them to report to us. Out of this, their top 3 were selected. It was Alliant, Campus Management, and Banner. From this, we have scheduled 3 demonstrations, and these will be live demonstrations. Banner will be on the Calhoun campus in Decatur, August 21st and 22nd. Alliant will be at Lawson Community College in Birmingham on the 23rd and 24th. And here on the 28th and 29th, Campus Management will give a live demonstration of their software. These demonstrations are going to be hosted in this auditorium and in Wheelus Auditorium while they're here. It will be 2 full days of going through everything that they do. If you have an interest of seeing what is being presented, you can either come here to the auditorium and watch it, ask questions. They will be available to answer any questions that you may have. Or you can watch it from your computer because it's going to be streamed live. And so we want everybody to have input. If you have concerns of what you see, I want you to inform me or ask me, and I will certainly address that with the companies. Anybody have any questions about ERP? You know, I'm trying to be enthusiastic about this, but, you know, it's... Okay, let's talk about performance-based funding. The issue. Historically, many colleges have received state funding based on how many full-time equivalent students are enrolled at the beginning of the semester. This model provides incentives for colleges to enroll students and thus provide access to post-secondary education. But this model does not necessarily provide incentives for institutions to help students successfully complete degree programs. Many states are reconsidering the enrollment-based funding model and instead are aligning funding models with the state goals and priorities. Any guess on what we use in Alabama? Basically, it's just the enrollment process. That's how we're basically funded. A little bit different, and I'll explain that a little bit later. This idea of performance-based funding began in 1979. We're just hearing about it now because we sit way down here and we're insulated in a lot of areas, but this has been going on for a long time. By 2007, performance-based funding had been adopted by the legislature of 26 states. To date, there are 38 states that have adopted some form of performance-based funding, with several other states contemplating similar transitions. Factors driving the initiative, and these are my opinion. One is a lack of funding and an increase in competition. There are only so many dollars available to be distributed for education, and there are a lot more hands trying to get those dollars. Our funding in Alabama comes through the Education Trust Fund, and it's basically made up of sales and use taxes that go into the trust fund. A few years ago, especially after 2008, when the markets crashed, sales revenues decreased to the point that we had this phenomenon that was called proration. What proration is that the legislature promises us so much money and then can't fulfill that promise because there's no money there to give us. So the Rolling Reserve Act was employed. The Rolling Reserve Act says this: It says we're going to take the average growth of the Education Trust Fund over the past 15 years, and that average growth will then be the benchmark for what we give out to the schools next year. The problem with that is that if you're in a period of level economy, you never get any new money. Let me explain how this works. Let's say, for instance, that the average growth of the trust fund for the last 15 years was 5%. And this past year, the growth was only 3%. Do we get any extra money? I see everybody shaking their head. No, we don't. What happens then to that 3%? It runs out of the top. Imagine this as 3 buckets. And all of the Education Trust Fund money goes into this big bucket, and that it fills all the way up to the top, and then it starts running over. Well, sitting right beside this bucket is another bucket that is set aside for the rainy day fund. That's just in case that we can't fulfill our obligations and we're not going to have proration again, so it goes into the rainy day fund. But that rainy day fund is only so big. And so when it fills up from year after year of money flowing into it and us not getting anything for pay raises, okay? And what happens when it starts flowing up? Well, there is then a capital outlay bucket that sits there beside it, and all the overflow kind of rolls over into the capital outlay bucket. Now, this is just my observation, but we don't get a whole lot of money out of that capital outlay money. I don't know where it goes. But the point is, it's not working as it is. There's a declining lack of funding with the two-year colleges especially. We also have a declining workforce. We have baby boomers that are retiring, and there's a general lack of foreign workers because of people crossing the border. Okay. We also have a failure of the K-12 system. The K-12 system is not necessarily producing at the level nationally as in Alabama as compared to the national average like it should be. And it creates problems for us because we get students that may not be prepared, and we have to spend a lot of our money in developmental courses, and they're not achieving success. All of these, there are also increased competency requirements in the workplace. It's harder to get a job because this job requires advanced training over here, okay? And so there are a lot of things that all come together. These are 4 things that are driving this issue, and the idea is that somebody wants us to perform at a higher level to relieve some of these pressures on the economy of the state of Alabama. Also, there's a 5th thing that I don't have listed here, and that's Senate Joint Resolution 85. Senate Joint Resolution 85 created a committee to take a look and come up with a means to report back to the legislature to implement performance-based funding or outcome-based funding. The two-year colleges and the chancellor are part of that committee. In response to that, the chancellor has also put together a committee of people from people just like us to go and give input on how this is to all shake out and how it's going to work. Who is our competition? You know, if you look around us, we have Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Mississippi who have all adopted some form of performance-based funding. They're already doing it. We're the lone state in the middle of all this and hasn't done anything. This is not something that has not been contemplated in the past. I have served on 2 statewide committees in the last 5 years to look at the funding formula for the two-year colleges in the state of Alabama. Each one of those committees looked at how we assess ourselves and how we give the money out in this limited funding base to make sure it's done on an equitable basis. Both of those committees come up with a small section of that funding formula to look at performance-based funding, to include performance-based funding. Neither one of those funding formulas were adopted by the ACCS office. Let me give you a little bit tell you about how our money that we get from the state of Alabama is determined. 80% of what we will get for fiscal year 17 and 18 is based on what we got in the past. And in the past, it was based on our credit hours, and it was based on how many technical programs we had. You get more money for a technical program than you do for an academic transfer program. But this was all settled in the past, and so whatever we got last year, we're going to get that same 80% again. 16% is determined by credit hours. If we're growing, we're going to get more or not, but there's not that much change up one way or the other, so credit hours will be part of that as well. But 4% is based on performance-based funding already. Now, the former chancellor that put this all together, he went ahead and put something in place without asking anybody, but it's there just the same. Part of what we get is determined by our success rate in having people graduate or complete our programs. So it is already there. As far as performance-based funding goes, Tennessee is the most aggressive performance-based funding model that we have before us right now. They're the most aggressive in the nation. Over the next few years, 80% of Tennessee state dollars will be based on performance. 80% for the colleges in Tennessee, their funding is going to be based on their performance. It's also going to have something in there for student retention, degree attainment, and developmental course completion. You see, we're not the only one that has problems with the raw materials that we create our product with, because other states have the same problem as we do. And there's also going to be a 40% premium for adults and Pell Grant recipients, which means that if we are challenged with economically disadvantaged students, we will get more for that as well too. And then there is waiting for retention, research, job placement, and whatever the college's focus is, their success on their primary focus. In our college here, we have several things that are our focus, but our primary focus is health care. So ours will be focused on health care and our completion rate there, if we were in Tennessee. Why are we having this discussion? We are in the minority. Everybody around us has already moved to some form of performance-based funding. The federal dollars are trending toward the performance-based funding criteria. We talked about, Dean Screws mentioned earlier today that the Pell Grant has some degree of performance-based funding placed on it. Economic development. We're losing industry to other regions because we can't provide a proficiently trained workforce. And we also have Senate Joint Resolution 85, creating the Alabama Community College System Advisory Council on Outcome-Based Funding. This is a breakdown on the factors that make up how we are being funded right now. What will the end result be for us? It's to be determined. I mentioned I'm on the statewide committee to select a software for administrative purposes. The committee has had, the sister committee, which is working on performance-based funding, has had one meeting. It was the first meeting was last week. Who knows where it's going to go? Dr. Young mentioned some factors that could come into play as part of that committee or as an outcome of that committee, but we really don't know. My point here this morning of sharing this with you is that it is coming. It is going to be a part of what we do. Because of our ICANN program, we are already well ahead of any other college in the state. Because of the quality of what we do, you sitting right here, we're going to be far ahead than any other college in the state as well. Any questions? What have I missed on this exciting subject on performance-based funding? Dr. Young said to tell you that we are the guinea pig. If you can imagine education as a three-legged stool, K-12, higher ed, four-year colleges, and the two-year colleges, we're one of those legs. The two-year colleges have been the first of the three to adopt performance-based funding, and so we will be the first one. Any questions? All right, now if you don't ask a question, I'm going to give it back to Keith. That's a real good question. And the question was, who is on the advisory council? I found someone here in the audience that does know.
Well, I think I mentioned earlier the first meeting of the advisory council for outcomes-based funding, and I think those terms are synonymous, performance-based or outcomes. That was held last Wednesday. Senator Dale Marsh started the meeting, and the members, and I'm not sure everyone was there, but the members are Blake McAnally, who's on the Board of Trustees and was appointed chair of the committee. Those you may have met him when we had the groundbreaking for the health building. He came that day. Okay, along with him is Al Thompson from the Board of Trustees for the Alabama Community College System, and he serves, as you know, as vice chair of the board. There was also a person named Charles Jones, and I'm not sure what he did, but he has been employed, I understand, by the system office after he was appointed to the committee. There is also Jim Purcell, who is chair of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. He will be here on August 30 to visit our college. First time I've ever known of an 8 executive director visiting community colleges, but he's visiting colleges all over the state. He has a community college background, by the way, which is good. There's also a person named Arthur Latham that I'm not sure what he does, but he was there, and there may be several who were out that day. But Blake McAnally will chair the committee. They established 4 meeting dates. I have them written down, but I don't remember what they are. The report that they have to present is due January of 2018, so they have, 4 months to put the report together. I will tell you that the model that I glean, again, my opinion, is the Tennessee model. Several months back, they had people from the state of Tennessee who talked to a legislative committee about how outcomes-based funding works in Tennessee. Of course, as you know, they have free tuition in Tennessee. But anyway, it's kind of evolving. But as Dean Bell said, we're up to bat first. The chancellor wanted to do that because he felt like we'd have a greater say in developing the plan. He's also on the committee. I forgot him. But we don't know the future of it, but it is coming, and we will be ready. Remember, what we did yesterday gets us ready for tomorrow. Any other questions that I could answer? Do you have anything else?
We have a few minutes here. Leslie, would you like to get up and lead us in a song or something? Okay.